The hum stops. Zhengzhou, China, November 2020. The world's largest iPhone factory goes dark. Assembly lines freeze mid-shift. Workers trapped behind dormitory gates. $10 billion, gone. Tim Cook stares at a screen, watching his empire crumble in real time. One question burns. Can the world's most valuable company survive without China? If you've ever wondered why your next iPad might say assembled in Vietnam instead of made in China, you're witnessing the most consequential industrial migration of our lifetime. For 20 years, Apple's soul was forged in Chinese factories. Every iPhone, every AirPod, every MacBook, all from the same place. But that world is ending. Not with headlines, not with drama. Quietly, methodically, irreversibly. By the end, you'll see how one nation turned Apple's crisis into its greatest opportunity, and why the hum of factories along Vietnam's Red River might be rewriting the rules of globalization itself. Let's rewind to when the cracks first appeared. 2018. The trade war ignites. Tariffs spike overnight. Supply chains buckle under political pressure. Apple holds steady. They've weathered storms before. Then 2020 detonates everything. Pandemic lockdowns seal Foxconn's Zhengzhou fortress, the city responsible for 70% of the world's iPhones. Production collapses. Holiday inventory evaporates. Apple Watch's $10 billion bleed out in 90 days. But here's what terrified Tim Cook more than the losses: the realization. His entire empire, phones, watches, the ecosystem that built a $2 trillion company, hung on one country's stability, one government's whims, one city's ability to keep lights on. Mid-2024. 90% of iPhones still rolled off Chinese assembly lines. That number haunted Cupertino like a ticking time bomb. Apple faced an existential choice: diversify or die. The question wasn't if they'd pivot, it was where. And across the South China Sea, one nation was already building the answer. Vietnam didn't stumble into this moment. They engineered it. Geography first. Northern Vietnam sits mere hours from southern China. Components flow across borders faster than shipping within provinces. Modern ports, rail networks, infrastructure built for this exact moment. Economics next. Labor costs 45% lower than Shenzhen, yet the workforce rivals China's golden era. Young, disciplined, hungry for transformation. Then the intangibles. Political stability. Zero trade wars with Washington. Free trade agreements spanning Europe to the Pacific through CPTPP. A government that moves at the speed of opportunity. April 2024. Tim Cook touches down in Hanoi. He doesn't visit small markets. This was a declaration. Cook announced $15.8 billion invested across Vietnam. 200,000 jobs created. 25 suppliers relocated. Foxconn, Luxshare, Goertek, Intel, Samsung. Building across Bac Ninh, Baxiang, Haiphong. 3 provinces most people couldn't locate on a map just became the new heartbeat of Apple's empire. JP Morgan's projections landed like thunder. Vietnam would manufacture 20% of all iPads and Apple Watches by 2025. 5% of MacBooks. And the number that stunned even Apple strategists: 65% of AirPods. 65% of the world's most ubiquitous wireless earbuds, all from Vietnam. But assembling yesterday's products, that's just the opening act. Vietnam isn't replicating China's past. They're building Apple's future. In partnership with BYD, Apple prototypes next-generation smart home devices in northern Vietnam's industrial corridors. The roadmap is already mapped. Home security cameras with AI recognition by late 2025. Touchscreen smart home hubs integrating every Apple device in 2026. By 2027, tabletop household robots equipped with sensors and voice interaction. Every prototype, every stress test, every final assembly, handled on Vietnamese soil. This transcends outsourcing. This is trust. When you entrust a nation with unannounced products, the innovations that define your next decade, You're making a statement about where power is shifting. Yesterday, Vietnam built your AirPods. Tomorrow, it builds your AI home. China forged Apple's past. Vietnam is engineering its future. But freedom has a price tag, and Apple is paying it willingly. $900 million per quarter. That's Apple's freedom tax, the cost of relocating factories, navigating new tariffs, training suppliers across continents. Nearly $4 billion annually just to eliminate existential risk. Most corporations would balk. Apple sees insurance. The calculation is brutal but elegant. $10 billion lost in one lockdown versus $4 billion spread across resilient networks. The math doesn't lie. Having everything in one place is just too risky, Cook admitted. When diversification costs were announced, Apple's stock didn't collapse. It climbed. Investors understood. Resilience is the new competitive advantage. Vietnam capitalized instantly. First 7 months of 2025 alone, $24 billion in foreign direct investment flooded in. Electronics, semiconductors, batteries. The future, arriving in container ships. Streets once lined with motorbike shops now pulse with data centers. Rice paddies transformed into industrial parks overnight. The Red River Delta glows at night, not with city lights, but with the hum of tomorrow being assembled. Apple's pivot ignited a wildfire. When the world's most valuable company redraws supply chains, everyone watches. Everyone follows. Samsung doubled down years ago. Intel manufactures chips there. Microsoft builds Surface devices there. Nike, Adidas, Dell, they're all in. Southeast Asia, led by Vietnam, is becoming the workshop of the digital age. Not because China failed, but because concentration became vulnerability. This isn't deglobalization. It's decentralization. 40 years ago, Vietnam emerged from war, struggling to survive. Today, it exports semiconductors, assembles humanity's most advanced electronics, and sits at tables where manufacturing's future is decided. That transformation wasn't luck. It was vision. Seeing what the world needed before the world knew it needed it. Like watching a river carve a new path. Slow at first, then unstoppable. Made in China is quietly becoming engineered in Asia. The iPhone's silicon brain still arrives from Taiwan, glass from Japan, software from California, but its body and soul, increasingly crafted in Vietnam. Apple isn't abandoning China. They're rebalancing the system that built them. China remains critical for components, R&D, and its massive consumer market. But singular dependence? That era died in Zhengzhou. For Vietnam, the stakes are existential. They must avoid China's trajectory, rising costs, geopolitical friction, overdependence on single customers. They're already diversifying, investing in education, infrastructure, regional partnerships. For the world, this reveals a deeper truth. Companies aren't reshoring, they're multishoring, building networks resilient enough to survive the next pandemic, trade war, or geopolitical shock. And for you? Next time you unbox an iPad or charge your AirPods, remember, that device didn't just travel from a factory. It traveled through transformation. A quiet revolution, rewriting global power without firing a shot. Vietnam didn't just win factories. It won something rarer: trust. So, where did Apple rebuild its empire? In the misty industrial parks of northern Vietnam, along the Red River Delta, in a nation that saw the future and built infrastructure to catch it. In a world where certainty is the scarcest commodity, Vietnam learned to manufacture it. The Red River doesn't roar, it hums. And that hum? That's the sound of tomorrow. If you want to understand the quiet shifts shaping tomorrow's economy, subscribe to See Insight. We uncover the transformations that don't make headlines, but change everything. Because the next story won't announce itself either. It'll unfold quietly, just like this one.